Really quickly, before we get going, does anyone know why the lion ate the tightrope walker? He wanted a well-balanced meal. That one was horrible. What do you call a sleeping bull? What do you call a sleeping bull? A bulldozer. Okay, little animal humor. Anyway, so we're still in Proverbs. It's a discussion of wisdom, right? That's what we've been looking at. How do we manage our time wisely? How do we manage our words wisely? How do we navigate this weird world wisely? And so one of the focuses that I want to look at in Proverbs covers so abundantly is conflict management, conflict resolution. It really kind of goes through and demonstrates how to navigate conflict well. So today, that's going to be the main focus. As we were kind of doing communion, I was on my phone a little bit because I finally came up with the right alliteration, and I wanted to write it down for the 3 points, first 3 points on your outline. So maybe you write, at least you don't have to write in, whatever. I liked needless conflicts, not your conflicts, and necessary conflicts. Those are the 3. And for some reason, I couldn't figure that out this whole week, and during communion, it appeared to me. So needless comments or conflicts, not your conflicts, and necessary conflicts. The 3 types of conflicts that I want to look at as we go through today. But the whole focus of Proverbs is to give us wisdom for this life. I heard one guy say, bravery is defined as knowing something will hurt and doing it anyway. And stupidity is defined the same way. And that's why life is hard, right? And that's why we need wisdom, right? So the whole book of Proverbs is geared to sharing God's wisdom for us, or to us. Wisdom for a good life. There's so much information, and sometimes we confuse information with wisdom. I looked up, I just wanted to kind of see how much information on average we take in. This was a New York Times article in 2009, that says that the average American takes in 34 gigabytes of data every day. And that was 2009. I couldn't find many other articles that I thought I could share, but a lot of the other updated stats are something like 75 gigs of data every day that we take in. When I first got my very first thumb drive in 2006 or so, 2006, I was late to the game. It was a 1 gig thumb drive. A 1 gig, and that was kind of a big deal. I paid like $60 for it. Probably paid too much, got hosed. Anyway, 1 gig thumb drive was able to contain all of my notes for the entirety of Sunset. For 2 years worth of classes, I was able to fit 2 years worth of notes in 1 gig thumb drive. And then I got a few years later, I got a 100 gig external hard drive. And on that, I was able to fit hundreds of sermons, not my own, good ones. I was able to fit hundreds of sermons and every single audio from every single one of my teachers from Sunset, and all of my notes. That's 100 gigs. And so we take in, on average, about 34, and this was in 2009. This was before social media, right? So you think about how much information you're taking just scrolling YouTube. So much information that we take in all of the time. And so much information on conflict resolution that we take in all of the time. So much opportunity for conflict that we're taking in all of the time. And the book of Proverbs, the Bible in general, has a way for us to navigate conflict well, right? To navigate conflict wisely. We encounter conflict every day. If you guys have kids right now and you brought them to church, good chance you navigated some conflict this morning. I leave before my family gets here, so I don't know about the issues. Sorry, Violet. Violet's great. We manage conflict every day, right? There are opportunities for conflict that pop up, opportunities to avoid conflict that pop up every single day. And the Proverbs has a lot to say about how we can navigate conflict well. So, the first element that I want to talk about in the book of Proverbs to navigating conflict well is that kind of needless conflict, right? The best kind of conflict you can have is the one that you avoid, right? And I really want to start off by saying this isn't saying to be a coward and shrink away from needed conflict. There is needed conflict, but there's so much conflict that arises in our lives that we just don't need to be a part of, right? That we can step out and step away from, and who knows, it's probably going to get better if we just exempt ourselves from that conflict, right? There's needless conflict. Has anyone ever had a conflict with someone online, right? Needless conflict doesn't help anything, right? And that's kind of one of the main points of the needless conflict is it going to help anything? Are you actually going to change anything by entering the conflict? So, one of the first elements is Proverbs chapter 12, verse 16. It says, fools show their anger at once, right? So a fool will fly off the handle and get really mad really quick. It's just like no instigation. Saying that's a mark of a fool. Someone who just, the littlest thing just sets them off. But the prudent ignore an insult, right? Someone who's wise can be insulted and just let it go. They don't take it and react, but the insult is given and then neutralized, right? It's one way to think about it is if someone's insulting you, man, that's a them problem, right? Something's wrong with that person, not you, right? As soon as you're having a disagreement with someone and then the other person begins insulting, it's a certainty that they know that they've lost the argument. They know that they've lost the point, so they're reaching to the lowest possible means of discourse, right? Insult is the absolute lowest part of human interaction that you can get into verbally. And it means that the conversation's lost, the other person has nothing of substance to say, so insult is the result, right? So insult happens, the wise person just, who cares? Next issue, let's move on. Neutralized, doesn't change you, doesn't affect you, right? So the only reason to react to insult is ego, right? The insult, it's nothing in itself. It's all in how you take it. And the wise person is able to not get angry, not get hot under the collar when insulted, and just move forward and actually get business done, right? Get the actual task at hand accomplished. Whatever with the insult, let's move forward. Then another way to put it is those with good sense are slow to anger, and it is their glory, it's their honor to overlook offense, right? So not simply just pretend it didn't happen, but to overlook it. So it's not pretending the insult didn't happen, it's I'm not even going to pay the insult attention, right? I'm just going to, talking to Logan, Logan's like, Derek, your beard sucks. I'm like, whatever, next issue. That's not going to be a part of the conversation. It's just no interaction with that issue. Let's actually move to the relevant material, right? So overlook it. And then that also means that I don't look at, say, Logan through the lens of his insult to my beard. I like my beard. That's all I need to know, right? That's it. Don't need to be thinking and obsessing and worrying about Logan's view of my facial hair. So the next kind of movement here in avoiding conflict, it is honorable to refrain from strife. It's an honorable thing to know when contention, when ill will, when conflict is there, whether or not you need to get into it, and to just exempt yourself. That's an honorable thing. To just back away, to not engage, to just let it be, whatever, that's not my business. It's not, not my circus, not my monkeys. I'm out of it. Don't need to worry about it. It is honorable to refrain from strife, but every fool is quick to quarrel. You guys probably know this person or have been this person on the second line. I know I have, from Proverbs 20, verse 3, who will argue at the drop of a hat and then drop the hat. Been there. I've been that guy. Just want to argue. And even if I don't agree with the point that I'm arguing, I just want to argue because I get a little bit of, dopamine out of it. It excites me to argue. It's like, that's a foolish way to act. That's a foolish way to live. And he's saying every fool is quick to that quarrel, right? But it's honorable to just refrain from an argument, right? So these needless arguments, recognize them. If you don't need to be engaged, don't be engaged. And that's the domain of fools. And then the do not portion, do not answer fools according to their folly, or you will be a fool yourself. I know for a fact that I've been the source of, and I've engaged in, arguments like this, where everyone is dumber having had them, right? The IQ of the room dropped because I started this argument. I've been there, I've done that. I've been in arguments where I get through arguing with the person and I'm like, man, I've just wasted like an hour of my life and I'm worse for it. Like I actually feel stupider now and I don't have a lot of IQ points to spare and I'm just worse now. Right? And we've all probably engaged in those conversations. Recognize where those conversations are and just don't get engaged. Just don't get involved. Exempt yourself. I disagree. That's easy to say. I don't agree with you. I'll check into that. Something. Exempt yourself from the conversation and move forward with life. Do not answer a fool according to their folly, or you will be a fool yourself. Have you ever got done with an argument, said, that did not get anywhere. Nothing got solved. I feel worse. My relationship with a person is worse off than it was when we started arguing. A few people heard about it or saw the argument. Now they think worse of me. This has done no good and it's done a lot of harm. That's so many arguments. And I'd say these needless arguments are probably, or needless conflicts, probably a third of most of our conflicts that we get into, that you get done with it, the conflict is over, and you're like, that just didn't need to happen. That could have ended with a simple, I'm sorry. Or just not bringing it up, or just not getting engaged with it. Right? Needless arguments. The wise person recognizes the needless arguments and just exempts themselves. But there's another category of conflicts. These are not your conflicts. Right? These are other people's problems. Right? These are problems, these are conflicts that don't belong to you, that belong to other people, but man, they are fun to get into. Right? And the wise person recognizes that temptation and again, steps away. So he's saying a crooked person spreads strife and whisperers separate close friends. Right? This is that he said, she said. Well, I heard from Billy who heard from Susie that you did such and such. I didn't do such and such. That's between Billy and Susie. What they want to think and what they want to talk about, whatever. So there's two people having a problem and then another person saying, you know what this conflict needs? Me. Doesn't need you. Right? It's the crooked person. It's the domain of the crooked person who spreads strife, who keeps the whisper campaign going. It is a crooked mind who spreads the whispers, who drives wedges in between friend groups, in between close associations, who says, well, when you're not around, he says such and such. It's like, who cares? That does not need to be in any part of the conversation. It's like, here's a great illustration from Proverbs chapter 26:17. Like somebody who takes a passing dog by the ears. Now just catch that visual. You're walking down the street, there's a Rottweiler walking by, and you decide just to give it a shake by the ears. How crazy is that? What do you expect to happen? If you see a Rottweiler just walking down the street and you grab it by the ears and you just you shake it, it's like, man, you're going to get torn up. Saying that craziness, that kind of madness is the same as one who meddles in the quarrels of another. What do you think's going to happen? Usually what ends up happening is the two parties that are quarreling find a common enemy, and that common enemy is you. And it's just bad news after that, right? So other people's quarrels, they don't need to be yours, right? This is one other element of conflict that we can just avoid easily. And kind of one assurance is, for lack of wood, from Proverbs 26, verse 20 and 21, for lack of wood, the fire goes out. What does that do with anything? Well, where there is no whisperer, quarreling ceases. If you just stop talking about it, there's no more problem. The problem only exists because everyone keeps bringing it up. It's dealt with, it's over, it's done. Just stop. There doesn't need to be another word said about it. All it's doing is producing more and more conflict. A charcoal is to hot embers and wood to fire. So is a quarrelsome person for kindling and strife. Right? Recognize the whisperer and just put a lid on it. Doesn't need to be talked about. There's a lot of things that just don't need to be talked about. The issue's solved, it's complete, and talking about it just brings more contention. Right? I had a guy that I went to school with. His it's Sibby, actually, at Sunset, preaching school. He liked to start an argument, really contentious argument, really problematic stuff. He'd just say the thing and then walk away and leave the room. He'd get everyone all stirred up and fighting. He would say something that he knew the two people or three people disagreed on. He'd bring up the subject, say a couple of things, and then just walk away. It was basically, he'd pull the pin on a grenade, throw it in the room, and then walk away. It's like, man, what's wrong with you? You just like to see people fighting. Saying that is not how we should be. That is a very unwise way to go about life. Liking to stir stuff up, a troublemaker, problem causer. That is an unwise way to live. But the reason why those whisperers and everything else, says they're like, from chapter 26, verse 22, the words of the whisperer are like delicious morsels. Man, who doesn't like a bit of juicy gossip? Isn't it so good just to hear about someone else's business? Right? There's something weird in us that wants to know what other people are doing or saying or feeling or whatever. It's like they're like delicious morsels, right? But the problem is that they go down into the inner parts of the body. Right? Yet once you've heard someone else's business, you can't help but see them through that lens. It changes the way that you perceive the person from then on. Just don't get involved. Don't get involved in other people's gossip, in other people's business, in other people's problems. Right? Those are needless conflicts. Those are not your conflicts. So those are two main categories. But there are a bunch of conflicts that are necessary, right? But I think that gets rid of maybe 2/3 of our conflicts, right? The needless ones, the ones that are just so dumb and we feel worse for having, those that are other people's. But then there are real conflicts that we need to engage in. There are real problems that really come up in our lives that affect us, that affect our families, that affect people that we love, affect our communities. There are conflicts that are necessary, and that's the third category. These are unavoidable conflicts. They're real things. And one of the first steps, I think, is take it seriously. When those conflicts arise that are necessary, take it seriously. So from Proverbs chapter 26, and you're going to see a lot, and you've probably already seen a lot from chapter 26. Chapter 26 is just a great chapter in Proverbs on conflict resolution. Like a maniac who shoots deadly firebrands and arrows, so is one who deceives his neighbor and says, I'm only joking, right? A neighbor was hurt. There was a problem that someone caused, and once the person brought it up, the response was, can't you take a joke? So then the problem is the other person's. They just have no sense of humor. I was only joking. I'm absolved of any guilt or No. If someone has a legitimate, to them, problem with you, we need to take it seriously. It needs to be honored. That person is hurt, that person is offended, something happened to that other person, they've worked up the courage to bring it to you, take it seriously. Right? Be honest, treat them seriously, treat the problem seriously. It's not a time to say, oh, can't you take a joke? Come on. I just, slashed your tires. Can't you take a joke? It's not a joke. Kind of building on that, whoever belittles another lacks sense. Right? You don't cut the other person down. You're lacking sense, but an intelligent person remains silent. Right? When someone is discussing or describing their problem with you when the conflict arises, it's not the time to give a little insult, to poke fun of them, to belittle their problem. It's time to stop and just listen. Right? I mean, how many times, I know I'm guilty of it, someone is bringing up a problem with you, they get about a quarter away through describing their problem, and then you stop them right there, and then just give a whole bunch of reasons or excuses or whatever. It's like, the problem wasn't actually discussed or described. It stopped right there once you interrupted. Remain silent. Right? Don't cut them down. Don't belittle. Allow the problem to be fully expressed. Be silent. He says, if one gives an answer before hearing, it is folly and shame. Right? Someone's a quarter of the way through describing the problem that they have, and you've already given 1,000 answers. It's like the relationship's ruined. Foolishness has happened. Or not the relationship's ruined. Relationship's damaged. Conversation's ruined. It's folly and shame to just stop a person before actually hearing. Next, if you can, stop the conflict early. Stop it quickly. Right? And Solomon says, the beginning of strife is like the letting out of water. So stop before the quarrel breaks out. Right? If you can put a patch on that, if you can fix it before it just bursts open, do it. Do it quickly. If a conflict can be solved with a simple, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Right? That's very different than, yeah, I'm sorry you took it that way. That's like the worst apology ever, right? That's a non-apology. That's putting the blame on the other person. I'm sorry you took my words that way. That's not an apology. I should have said that differently. That's an apology. I'm sorry, I did not express myself the way I should have. I didn't say what I should have there. My fault. I could communicate that a little bit better. Something, right? To take ownership of the fault, right? And help to maintain that. But if you can stop it early with a simple, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I was wrong. That was sinful of me. Can you forgive me? If you can stop it quickly, do so. Right? There's no need to drag out a conflict. The way we stop it, a soft answer or a gentle answer, your translations might have in chapter 15, verse 1. A soft answer or gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Right? And a gentle answer or a soft answer isn't a weak answer. It's not the same thing. Right? That is wrong. That is sinful. It's a gentle answer, but it's not a weak answer. Right? I cannot do that because I believe that is wrong. It's not a weak answer, it's a firm answer. But you can be gentle and firm. You don't need to be harsh in order to be strong. Right? It's a very different thing. You can be gentle and be firm at the same time. So saying a gentle answer turns away wrath. But harsh words stir up anger. I don't want to do that because only stupid people do that. It's like, well, that's just going to cause problems, right? A gentle answer, a soft answer turns away wrath. So when there's a conflict and you need to say something, how can I put this in a way that will not send this other person through the roof, that will not be insulting, that will not be belittling, that will not cause more strife? How can I say this in a way that puts an end to contention? That's the wise course of action. And he says, with patience, a ruler may be persuaded. With patience, a ruler may be persuaded. So in the conflict, our responsibility is to have patience. Right? And then he says, and a soft tongue can break bones. Right? So we just constantly need to ask ourselves, am I arguing a point or am I in conflict with a person? It's always the second. It's always the second. Honor the person. When there is a conflict, honor the person. Recognize that there's a human being made in the image of God on the other side of this disagreement. On the other side of this problem, there's a human being made in the image of God who is fallen like me, who needs grace like me, who is just as broken as I am, and together we can work this out. Right? So there are needless problems, there are not your problems, and there are necessary problems. And the wise action is to recognize one from the other and to deal with them accordingly. I just want to kind of end with two passages. Well, you know what? Just do one passage, and I'll read it. This is how Jesus deals with conflict. Go to Romans chapter 5. So, while we are sinful enemies to God, while we insult Him by rebelling against Him through our own sinful behaviors, how does God, through Jesus, treat us? Go to chapter 5, in verse 10. While we were enemies, so when we were enemies, when we were hostile in mind, when we were hostile in action, when we were enemies to God, while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God. He didn't save His friends. We weren't friends of God when we were saved. We were enemies of God. God sought reconciliation through sacrifice. Right? That's how God resolves conflict with us, is seeking reconciliation through giving something up. Not flying off the handle, not responding in anger, but instead, while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of His Son. Much more now that we are reconciled, we shall be saved by His life. More than that, we rejoice in God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have now received reconciliation. And that stands at the basis of the entire Christian worldview, is reconciliation. That we were enemies to God, we were hostile in mind, God sacrificed, he gave his one and only Son, that through believing in him we would be saved and have eternal life, not be condemned. So remember just the human element in any conflict. And it might end up looking more like, what do I need to give up in order to make this relationship work, in order to resolve this conflict? What do I have to sacrifice? And we have that illustration, or not illustration, we have that example in the sacrifice of Christ. That's what God did to make reconciliation with us. Jesus is on the cross, people are insulting him, mocking him. Jesus' response is, Father, forgive them. They do not know what they're doing. Right? There's a person on the end of every conflict. So if you are in a conflict with another person and need some help, need some wisdom to get through that, to manage that, to navigate that, and the church can do anything to help you resolve those conflicts. And conflicts are just going to happen in this life. They're just a part of life. So if there's a way that the church can help you and be a benefit to you to resolve those conflicts, right now is the time to make those needs known. If you are in conflict with God and need your sin forgiven, to be reconciled to God through Jesus Christ, if you haven't experienced the forgiveness of sins, if you haven't been baptized into Christ for the forgiveness of your sins, to receive the gift of the Holy Spirit, right now is the time to make that need known as well. And if there's anything else that the church can do to help you out, would you please come forward as we stand and sing our last song.